Welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am thrilled to have you join me on this transformative journey. You see, every day we dive into a powerful conversation about self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. This podcast is brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, where we believe that loving yourself is the first step to living a fulfilling life. You can expect insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories. Plus, we'll occasionally welcome special guests who will share their unique perspectives on self-love and personal growth. So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's embark on this journey together. Because it's time to embrace the beautiful person that you are. So let's elevate our lives one episode at a time. Now let's get started. Hey, my beautiful people. Welcome to Threshold Thursday here on the Season of Self-Love podcast. I'm your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am truly excited that you are tuning in today as we continue our journey through our May theme series of nurturing relationships. You know, what a powerful week that we had so far. On Monday, Dr. Will and I, we explored the transformation power of forgiveness and how it's not about excusing behavior, but creating a space for healing. And then on Tuesday, we talked about the ripple effect of authentic connections and how one genuine conversation can transform multiple relationships. And yesterday, we had that amazing Jenny Lythe who's sharing her wisdom about how prioritizing self-care actually strengthens our connection with others. Well, today we are standing at an important threshold that I think brings all of these conversations together. We're going to explore what I call the space between forgiveness and boundaries. You know, that sacred territory where we learn to honor both ourselves and our relationships at the same time. But before we dive in, let's take a quick break, all right? And when we get back, we'll ground ourselves and get into a very powerful conversation, all right? Well, it's your girl, the Goddess Nyomi Banks here on the Season of Self-Love podcast, and we'll be right back.
Ready to transform how you think about love and mental health? This May, join host Nyomi Banks and Dr. Washington and expert guests on Love and Mental Health, a powerful 4-part series exploring relationships through the lens of mental wellness. Every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Ask Nyomi, Bridging the Gap. Do you have a story to share? Your experience matters. Email us at asknyomi@gmail.com and be part of the conversation that's changing lives.
Washington Wellness Institute focuses on healing always. For me, if I look good, then I feel good. If I feel good, then I share the good. If I share the good, then I celebrate the good. If I celebrate the good, then I live the good. So I can be paid to be my greatest. But I have to learn the good to be the good.
So, what does it take to be the greatest? It's as simple as a free 15-minute consultation. Be kind to yourself and heal always.
All right, my beautiful people, well, welcome back. Well, before we dive into today's topic, let's ground ourselves with a mindful moment. So if you can find a comfortable position and just close your eyes. And now I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it for one moment. And now gently exhale through your mouth. And let's repeat that again. Inhale through your nose. Hold for a moment. Now exhale. Now this time, when you inhale, I want you to inhale forgiveness. And I want you to exhale resentment. Inhale forgiveness. And exhale resentment. Now I want you to visualize a beautiful garden. And this garden represents the space between you and someone with whom you're working through complexity. Maybe it's forgiveness, maybe it's boundaries, or maybe it's both. And I want you to see this space not as an empty distance, but as a fertile ground where healing can grow. And with each breath, I want you to imagine tending to this garden, removing weeds of misunderstanding, planting seeds of compassion, and watering with patience. I want you to notice how this garden requires both strong boundaries to protect what's grown and openness to allow for connection. Now take one more deep breath in, feeling yourself becoming both stronger in your boundaries and more open in your heart. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes and carry this awareness with you. All right, my beautiful people, if you are new here to the Season of Self-Love podcast, this mindful moment is something that we do every day, Monday through Friday, just to help ground us before we get into the topic at hand. And so today, we're exploring this powerful threshold between forgiveness and boundaries. You know, when I was reflecting on our conversation with Dr. Will on Monday about forgiveness, there was something that really hit me. He talked about how forgiveness isn't just about letting go, but it's about creating a new lens through which we see our relationship. It's about expressions rather than just a ideology of it, right? And that got me to thinking about how forgiveness and boundaries might seem like opposites concepts at first glance. You know, forgiveness feels like an opening while boundaries feel like a closing, right? But what if they're actually two sides of the same coin? What if they both serve the same purpose to help us to love more authentically? You see, I've learned through my own healing journey that forgiveness without boundaries often leads to repeated hurt. So our boundaries without forgiveness can leave us walled off and isolated. That is when we learn to hold both together, and that's real transformation happen. That's when real transformation happen. All right, so I remember this situation with a family member. I'm not going to name any names. But this person had hurt me repeatedly for years. And I've tried to practice what I thought was forgiveness. And I'll say something like, okay, I forgive you, but then allow the same patterns to continue without establishing any boundaries. And the result was more hurt, more resentment, and ironically, less ability to truly forgive that person. Because I wasn't being honest about my needs or my limits for my forgiveness. And then my forgiveness, guess what? It became hollow. So it was something I was saying, but not truly feeling like I forgive you. But then there was resentment and, somebody say their name and I'd be like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? And it's like, yes, I've forgiven that person, but have I? And I knew it because that person kept doing what they were doing. And I was like, okay, that's okay. And then, and I'm going to talk about this later on probably. And then I would say, well, that's just them. But in the meantime, not setting my boundaries for what our relationship going to look through. But I'm going to tell you what the breakthrough for me came is when I realized that real forgiveness wasn't about saying it's okay when it wasn't. Real forgiveness was about saying, okay, what happened wasn't okay, and I'm choosing to release its hold on me. And here's what I need moving forward to feel safe in this relationship. See, that space between forgiveness and boundaries is about acknowledging the hurt without clinging to it, while also clearing the communicating of what you need to prevent future hurt. It's not either or a situation. I want to repeat this. About acknowledging the hurt without clinging to it, while also clearly communicating what you need to prevent future hurt. But it's not either situations or a situation, it's both. You know, Dr. Will talked on Monday about how he approaches the forgiveness through expressions, through giving grace, showing acceptance, learning the lesson, and creating boundaries. You know, that resonated with me deeply because it's not just about is just not some abstract concept of forgiveness. It is about embodying forgiveness through how we show up. About how we show up. And with Jenny Lythe, she echoed this yesterday when she talked about self-care not being selfish. When we take care of ourselves, which includes setting healthy boundaries, we actually have more capacity to extend forgiveness and compassion to others. You see, we can't pour from an empty cup, right? We just can't. So what does this space between forgiveness and boundaries actually look like in practice? Well, let me share a few reflections that have helped me to navigate the territory. All right, so first, understanding that forgiveness is for you, not them. So when we forgive, we're not doing it primarily for the other person. We're freeing ourselves from carrying the weight of resentment and anger. And as Dr. Will said, forgiveness is an expression, a way of orientating ourselves toward healing rather than just being in that space. But that doesn't mean that we erase our boundaries. In fact, clear boundaries can make forgiveness more possible because we're not fearful of repeating harm. Does that make sense? And second, it's about recognizing the boundaries. That recognize the boundaries are an act of love, both for yourself and ultimately for the other person. So when I told my family member, I care about you and I need you to respect this boundary, I was actually giving them an opportunity to show up differently. I was loving them enough to be honest rather than pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. And my third practice is what I call compassionate clarity. And what this means is communicating my boundaries with that loved one. That means communicating your boundaries with that loved one, whether than anger or blame. So it might sound like this: when this happens, I feel hurt and I need this instead. And are you willing to work with me on that? You see, with this approach, it doesn't guarantee the other person will respond well, but it gives the relationship the best chance to heal. Fourth is to accept that some relationships may need to transform rather than be restored to their previous state. Forgiveness does not always mean that things go back the way that they were. That sometimes, especially when paired with honest boundaries, it means that this relationship evolves into something different, maybe more distant, maybe more closer, but definitely more authentic. And finally, I want you to remember that this is an ongoing practice, not a one-time event. We don't just forgive once and set boundaries once. We continue to navigate this space as relationships evolve and new situations arise. So, on Tuesday episodes, and I shared about the powerful conversation that I had with my auntie and how our relationship endured because we've created space for real honesty. That's a beautiful example of this dance between forgiveness and boundaries. I mean, we've had our disagreements and we hurt each other at times, but we've always been able to say, I love you, and here's what I need. You see, with that combination of forgiveness and boundaries has created one of the most authentic relationships in my life. And I know some might be thinking, but Naomi, what about relationships where the hurt is really deep? What about the betrayal or the abuse? And that's a valid question, a very valid question. And in those situations, those boundaries might need to be much stronger. Perhaps even meaning no contact for a period of time or permanently. Forgiveness in those cases become even more personal, something that you do on your own healing rather than for a reconciliation. The key to recognize is that you can forgive someone, meaning release the hold their actions have on your heart without putting yourself in a position to be hurt again. That's not contradictory, that's wisdom. I think about what Maya Angelou, famous quote, said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And to me, that's not about holding grudges. It's about honoring the reality of who someone has showed you who they are, who has demonstrated themselves to be, while still choosing to release resentment from your own sake. So I acknowledge this is who you are, at least at this time. At least at this moment and at this time, this is who you showing me who you are. So I'm going to honor that. And I see you. But now what that does for me, it gives me a choice to say, okay, I see what that is. And now I can act accordingly to it and not ignore it. Does that make sense? So how do we actually practice living in this space between forgiveness and boundaries? Well, here's some practical steps that I think that will help you, all right? First, let's get clear on what forgiveness means to you personally. So I asked Dr. Will when we discussed on Monday about forgiveness, that it looks different for different people. And for some, it's about finding understanding for the other person's action. And for others, it's about releasing the emotional charge around what happened. So what you need to do is define what true forgiveness means for you. And then second is to identify your non-negotiable boundaries. These are the limits that when crossed significantly, that impact your well-being. They're not about controlling others. They're about honoring your own needs and values. So get really honest with yourself about what these are. And third, practice communicating both forgiveness and boundaries in the same conversation. And it might sound like this. I am working on my forgiveness for what happened. And going forward, I need these boundaries to be respected. This balanced approach, it often catches people off guard in the best way because they expect either pure forgiveness with no boundaries or pure boundaries with no forgiveness. And fourth, build a support system of people who understands the nuanced support approach. Surround yourself with those who don't pressure you to just forgive and forget, but who also don't encourage you to wall yourself off from healing. And then finally, be patient with yourself in this process. You see, moving between forgiveness and boundaries is a very tricky and sophisticated emotional work. I'm going to tell you this, you won't do it perfectly, and that's okay. But what matters is that the commitment to both your own healing and the possibility for more authentic connections. You know, one of the most beautiful things that I've discovered is that when we live in this space between forgiveness and boundaries, we become more whole. We're no longer fractured between the part of us who wants to forgive and the part of us that needs protection. See, we've integrated it. We integrated to bringing our full wisdom to our relationship. So I give you guys an invitation today, and I want you to think about a relationship in your life where you might need both forgiveness and boundaries. And where have you perhaps emphasized one at the expense of the other? What would it look like to hold both simultaneously? Maybe you've been all forgiveness without boundaries, constantly extending grace but never communicating your needs. Or maybe you've been all boundaries without forgiveness, protecting yourself but still carrying the weight of resentment. What might shift if you embrace both? Well, tomorrow on Freedom Friday, we'll explore on how these integrated approaches to forgiveness and boundaries actually creates more freedom in our lives. Freedom from both resentment and repeated hurt. And I hope that you will join me for that conversation. Now, my beautiful people, if this episode has resonated with you, please share it with someone who might benefit. And don't forget about our free year of rebirth workbook on our website with journal prompts and exercises to help you to explore these themes more deeply. So until tomorrow, I want you to remember that you are allowed to both forgive and protect your heart. You are worthy of relationships that honor your boundaries while making space for healing. And your journey towards this balance is itself an act of profound self-love. So again, I want to thank you for joining me here on the Season of Self-Love podcast. And you all have an amazing day. Have a good one. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and empowerment here at the Season of Self-Love podcast. Remember, embracing self-love is a continuous journey, and we're so glad to have you with us. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. And don't forget to join our community on Facebook at Season of Self-Love. Connect with like-minded individuals who are also on their self-love journey. Now, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like for us to explore, we love to hear from you. Email us at seasonofselflove@gmail.com and let your voice be heard. So until next time, take a moment for yourself today and remember, you are worthy of love, joy, and all the beautiful things that life has to offer. Have a good day.